Oh, let me. hmm.
So, are we streaming on your channel right now?
Am I what?
Are we streaming on your channel right now?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
we're. Well,
that's that's
I would
easy.
I would think
Like that was so easy. I just click one link and we're streaming again. That's easy.
so.
Do you use some kind of third-party software to do that?
Some what?
Some kind of third-party software to do that, or do you use YouTube's?
No, just from YouTube. There's an option when you're about to start that says share live stream. Then when you hit next, it says send invitation link. Just like that.
Oh, cool. Well, that's easy.
Yeah. I mean, there's an option on Instagram, I believe, where just people can solicit to join. So YouTube is still a little behind, but it's getting there. I
I
would
see.
like I would like to have that so my viewers could ask to join just like right now.
Right.
Uh,
I mean,
maybe,
it requires you to trust people who want to come in because you're gonna get some people who come in and like show their junk or something.
wait, what?
I mean, you have to trust the people who ask to come into
Sure.
the stream.
Yeah,
Otherwise, they might porn bomb you or something.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. That's also a concern.
Are
There
you
may be.
coming to California?
Mm, yes, the question is when, but I really would like to. I don't know if December is like too soon. Maybe I don't know. I would love to. I'll speak to my family, and if they help me on that, it would be great.
Oh,
I'll
cool.
let you know. I'll let you know soon. I'll figure it out soon.
All right, cool. And if you if you if they if you figure out transportation here, it won't cost you very much when you're here.
You what?
I said if you can get here, it won't cost you very much while you're here.
Okay.
Because
Wait. What's the word? You what? Caught?
I said I said if you can get here, it won't cost you very much while you're here.
Cost?
Yeah, it won't cost you very much to travel here while you're here because you'll be
Okay.
staying with us and you can eat our groceries and
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I see. Wow. Whoa. Gee. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Mhm.
Appreciate it. Okay, I see what you mean by cost. Yeah. So, okay, para mí it's so weird speaking Spanish with you here. Para los que estén viendo, aprovechen y lancen sus preguntas aquí con un experto en tipología.
Sí,
Aprovechen.
sí. Yo
Sí.
estoy un expert de palabras de funciones de cognitive,
Cognitivas.
cognitivas.
It says, someone asked, what's your name?
Me llamo es Eric.
Se llama Eric.
I actually used to speak Spanish reasonably well because my first wife was half Mexican and her mom was from Michoacan and she didn't really speak English all that great. So when I was married to her, I practiced speaking Spanish pretty often and I heard it a lot. But it's been years since I've been in that heard a lot of Spanish. So I've kind of lost it.
Okay, wow, so you married a Spanish speaking girl?
No, her mom, she was half Mexican, half white, the woman I married. But her mom was all Mexican from Michoacan.
Okay.
And she still hadn't really mastered English. So in their house, her husband, he was a white guy from West Virginia, but he spoke all the Mexicans around that family all told me he speaks beautiful Spanish.
Okay. Great. So can you see the comments?
Yeah, I can see him. Talking to Spanish people is the Iago from the future. Juela ya no lo niegues. En realidad eres el de la derecha.
Yeah, it's saying, don't deny it, you're actually the one in the right.
Oh, me? I'm not
Yeah.
ever going to deny being correct. That is
No, no,
correct.
me.
Oh,
Yeah,
you.
I am. Yeah, they're saying like, don't deny you're actually the one in the right. They're saying to me.
Okay.
Lance sus preguntas, pues, tantas preguntas que me hacen cuando estoy yo y ahora sí.
¿Qué, qué vivan las barbas?
Yeah, lonely beards.
Oh, okay. I'm fine. Zan Miko O2, how are you?
¿Quién dice quién es? Who is he? Ah, es alguien que ha investigado esto de funciones cognitivas, MBTI, Socionics, tipología, tiene incluso su propio modelo, por decirlo. Así que hagan sus preguntas, aprovechen que estoy en vivo
How,
con él.
how would I describe NI? Is that directed to me? I'd say that it's you got two ways to know, and one of them is you remember your experiences, and the other is you know what something is outside of you by its identity. NI is that one.
Ok, give me a second to translate that. Le preguntaron que qué es, cómo escribiría NI y dice que básicamente hay dos formas de saber, que una es a través de la experiencia y una es simplemente saber o intuir lo que hay fuera de ti.
Yeah, it's like people think of knowing usually when they think of it as SI. You learn something and you remember it. But intuition is also a way to know things.
Right. Did I tell you I had a typing session with an ENFJ guy who told me that he likes to draw. He made a I believe it was a digital drawing where he put a political figure like this,
Uh-huh.
and he himself was like, I don't know why I did it. And then just a couple years later, he was made a martyr. He was killed, but made a martyr, and he was like, "Whoa."
Do you think intuition anticipated that happening?
I mean, here we're reaching into sort of mystic abilities and stuff. It's not like because I mean, I'm sure there's even like other types that could happen, that kind of could happen, but it's just a curious, um,
Mm.
archetypical coincidence. Coincidence.
Shoot.
Es cuando Granny, porque pregunta sobre las correlaciones. Oh, okay. This is a good question. I think you're not very interested in this because I think you have like for example, Jack from Socionics says that Socionics is best typology. You say your model is best typology.
No, I don't say that. I say I
No,
don't have a model. I
okay,
accurately describe reality.
okay. So a big thing in typology community in Spanish is correlations between systems, between mainly Enneagram and MBTI or Socionics.
Mhm.
So what do you think about that? There's mainly the two arguments are anyone is possible or no, not everyone is possible. Not every combination is possible.
Well, I mean, I think that socionics and MBTI are both inadequate ways of explaining the same thing. They can be better explained with defensible claims. And that's really the key. If you don't know what you're trying to do, you can't possibly do it correctly. Enneagram, however, fits in with cognitive functions fine. They don't, if you don't if you don't overreach with Enneagram, it doesn't step on the feet of cognitive functions.
So you believe it's um yeah, it doesn't trump it?
You know what I'm saying? Basically, my take on Enneagram is it's a sub taxonomy of just FI. It's dealing
Okay.
specifically with three kinds of emotions: anger, shame, and fear. But
Okay,
yeah.
okay, give me a moment just to translate what we're saying.
Mhm.
Ok, le pregunté qué opinaba sobre las correlaciones, principalmente de Enneagrama y MBTI Socionics, y me dijo que, me dijo que tanto MBTI como Socionics se quedan limitados y están describiendo de maneras incorrectas, pues eso, los procesos, los tipos, todo eso. Entonces
I,
dice que Enneagrama está hecho de una manera en la que no se contrapone con las funciones cognitivas. Y dice que para él, Enneagrama simplemente es taxonomía de FI, de sentimiento introvertido. Ahora, ahora avanzaremos sobre eso. So,
mean, a
so
good
okay.
analogy is like Socionics and MBTI and the correct description of cognitive functions. Well, it's like, you know, maybe MBTI says the reason continents are drifting apart is because of expanding Earth, but the reality is it's because of continental drift and plate tectonics. So you can't have two conflicting explanations for the same thing. But Enneagram is like something different. It's like maybe explaining how the Grand Canyon is formed through water erosion. It's sort of related, but not the same thing.
Okay. So I'm on the I'm on the group that believes that there yes there are correlations because I do believe Enneagram when you go deep into it you do see cognitive um, tendencies or attitudes or whatever like Innate type 7 it really is
Well,
describing someone who's not good with the sensoric functions.
well, that's true. But the thing is, that's only if you credit too much of a person's personality to Enneagram. So, like, if you read a Naranjo description of Type 7, it's going to claim a lot of stuff that's consistent with ESTP, ENTP, for example, but it's because of that, not because of the Enneagram.
Sure, I mean, I guess that's the TI way to approach it, but also what I what I've seen is like watching it from the other side, where I just make my list of people who I know are whatever ENFP, people who are Enneagram 7, whatever, and I do see the correlations. And even when someone says something like, "Oh, I'm ENFP 5, I swear," if I get the chance to actually know the person, I always end up seeing it's not the case.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you got to be careful of this. It's like you've got a gray car and an elephant, and you point out that they're both gray and heavy, but they're not the same thing. It's not for the same reasons, you know?
Not for the same reasons.
Yeah, so like if you take a type 7 and you take an ENTP, you might note commonalities between them. But the reason why they're both gray and heavy is because they're both elephants, not because cars and elephants have something in common. So in other words, the reason the 7 and the ENTP are both gray and heavy is because they're both ENTPs. The 7 is incidental to it.
The 7 is what?
Incidental to the commonalities. Because if you found 2 7s, probably they're more likely to be both action types, right? So you're saying, oh, these 7s all share this commonality. In actuality, you're noting a commonality between the 2 action types that links to cognitive functions and doesn't link to Enneagram 7. But the correlation comes from the fact that their 7 is more likely to be an action type.
Okay. Okay. Give me a second to read comments.
Okay.
We'll continue. We'll continue. ¿Cree que algún tipo de las tipologías puede asociarse a una religión, ya que algunas personas asocian un tipo en específico con ser religioso? Cada personalidad. A ver. Tipologías puede asociarse a una. Well, someone asks if some of the type could be more associated with religion.
Well, I think NI broadly associates with holistic magical thinking, and SI tends to be skeptical of that stuff.
Okay, dice que NI, right?
Yeah, NI is it's like, it's not a religion, but like Rachel likes astrology and stuff like that, right? Because it's a holistic explanation of things outside of them that's
Okay,
informative about themselves.
dice que a NI pues le gustan las visiones holísticas de explicar pues todo lo que existe, cosas, lo trascendental y todo eso, entonces puede haber más o menos ahí una tendencia. Evangélicos y NFP son los fans de Evangelion. Okay, so someone asks, how would you describe an ENTJ?
I would describe them as very focused on the purposefulness and utility of every given action they take.
Okay, dice que lo describe como alguien que está enfocado en el propósito y la practicidad de cada acción que toma. Someone asked if you know about Enneagram or how much.
I
Someone
mean,
says someone says you're Claudio Naranjo.
says I'm what?
Someone says you are Claudio Naranjo.
Oh, I'm Naranjo? No, I'm not Naranjo. I consider myself more of an expert on Enneagram than experts on Enneagram because I believe I limit the scope of what it explains to the appropriate area rather than overreaching with it.
Okay, dice que se considera que conoce Enneagrama mejor que algunos expertos de Enneagrama porque como que no estira el alcance, algo así. Quería saber qué opina él sobre más adelante en un futuro que las sociónicas estudie. Ya te voy diciendo, él no es un socionista. Someone says, I would like to know what does he think about in a future socionics being studied in schools and other places, somewhat, so it could be more accessible.
I mean, I don't think socionics is a good thing to be studied by anybody because it's in order to correctly do this thing, right? In order to correctly describe cognitive functions, you have to, number one, establish what you're trying to accomplish. And socionics doesn't know if it's modeling something or if it's a taxonomy of dichotomies. It's got a mishmash of different kinds of distinctions that it makes that are of different kinds of distinction, and it doesn't understand it's not framed properly. It's a poorly made case.
Ok, básicamente dice que Socionics en general no debería ser algo que se estudiara, porque al hacer todo esto, un modelo, tipología o así, tienes que saber lo que quieres o cuál es tu objetivo con esto. Y dice que Socionics como que es demasiado un compendio de demasiadas cosas y que al final no se sabe bien lo que hace o cómo lo plantea, algo así. Mm, ¿Qué opina la de ti? Va a salir un jumpscare, seguro no la conozco, creo. Seguro mi abuelito no conoce a Daniel. No lo conoce hasta que yo le dije, yo le mencioné a Daniel. Daniel versus Hydrogen Bomb. Cat jumpscare. Coughing Daniel versus Hydrogen Yago. ¿Por qué habla como robot? Someone says you speak like a robot.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to add that since the best thing about socionics is intertype relations. They're not always accurate, but at least it's it can be verified empirically and isn't predicated on mechanical claims.
Ok, dice que quiere agregar algo sobre las relaciones de intertipo, que, que se pueden, o sea, eso se puede ir verificando empíricamente y que pues esa parte de la propuesta está bastante bien. So let me tell you something. I don't know if your reaction is going to be like, oh, why did you do it? But I'm actually taking a class with Victor Gulenko online.
Well, I mean, that's fine. It's just it's I mean, you're gonna be just led astray because Victor Blanco, whatever else you might think about him, he doesn't know how to put together a case. If you don't know how to put together a case, then you don't know what you're trying to do or what would represent success in having done it, and how to falsify, how to validate, and stuff like that. He doesn't know how to do that.
Okay. And I was, so we're like seven in the class, with seven students. And I found one other student speaks English, is from the United States. She sounds an awful lot like you. Um, and I was curious if she watched your channel, and she said she didn't. An so she says she's an ILI, so INTJ, Enneagram 5, and autistic. So she's very, very nerd about socionics. And we were just um, chatting. We were talking about experiences and stuff about intertype relationships, and we were just noticing so much patterns.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, philosophy is the most rigorous science, and that's what cognitive functions is attempting to execute philosophy properly. You have to understand how to execute argumentation properly to do that.
Right. So a few weeks ago, I made a short, like a 4-minute video about a thought I have. You can let me know what you think about it. But one time I saw a squirrel just digging in the ground, and it caught my attention because I thought, why does it know it has to do that? I, I thought of NI because it's not that another squirrel came and said, hey, you need to dig so you can survive. It just instinctively knew it. So how much could we attribute instincts to NI, as in
I think those
evolutionary just knowing?
those kind of instincts you're talking about are not NI. That's much more likely to be SI. So, like a baby is born with the ability and instinct to suck, right? And so they don't have to be taught that, but it's an SI thing. It's like it's coded into your hardwired SI that you know when you have to pee, you know when you want to drink milk from mom's boob, and you know when you want to dig a hole if you're a squirrel or something.
Sure, but more in not just like mm, not actions that are that simple. Maybe
Well,
in
I mean,
reaching
the thing about
into
squirrels is they
cognitive things.
bury their various things and hide it in places, but they don't remember where those places are. They have to re-find them again.
Right. But maybe other behaviors where they're doing something that is going to affect the future, their survival in the future. maybe even like why do some animals, like even reproductive rituals, like why do they know some things are going to achieve certain things?
Well, they look. I mean, squirrels don't need to have any idea what sex is going to accomplish in order to want to have sex, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, if you want to talk about NI in a squirrel, NI would be like a squirrel on the wall eating some seeds, watching me, checking my body language to see if I'm a threat or not. You know?
Okay. Okay, I see. Let me read some more comments. Es una IA, ¿por qué solo se ve un pasillo? Bu, IAs, what, ¿qué está pasando? ¿Qué está pasando? Pues estoy en vivo con Eric de Talking with Famous People. Es alguien que ha investigado tipología, sí. Así que aprovechen y hagan sus preguntas. Y yo estaré aquí traduciendo las preguntas, lo que él diga y así. Porque los robots dominarán el mundo. A ver, por cierto, voy a hacer las preguntas que sean más relevantes también para aprovechar el tiempo. Es que pasó eso una burla a mi papá. Yo soy NFP7, very invisible. A mí me da todo NFP, pero no sé qué tan negro sea. Negro, no sé qué. Ahora sale señor vestida del armario y sale. ¿Qué? Pone a mi abuelito así. ¿De qué hablan? O sea, que dice que los enagramas son otras formas de escribir lo mismo que los tipos. No, son otras formas de escribir FI específicamente. Analiza si se te dificulta SI. Ni ningún afternoon, ni ningún hello. Aquí tú me hablas de español. Abuelo, gracias. How would you? Okay, so the same guy says, how would you describe an ESFJ?
I mean, ESFJs are are an interesting mix of being kind of group focused from FE and very self attending via their SI tool. You know, I was married to an ESFJ, and I found it frustrating because of the NI polar, which means they don't really ever get the singular point of things. Arguments don't ever resolve. You know.
Right. Dice sobre los ESFJ que es una combinación interesante entre que se orientan a los grupos por FE, pero también se atienden a sí mismos por SI. Y que él estuvo casado con una SFJ y que encontraba frustrante el NI polar, el NI vulnerable, porque a veces no ven como las discusiones a dónde llevan, al punto singular, a lo que llevan. Someone asks, what is your t-shirt? Is it a panther? It asks.
No, it's this is a T-shirt from a concert I went to uh, for Johnny. And so if you look at the back of it, it's got like the the show dates and stuff.
Oh, ok. Es una camiseta de un concierto.
And I highly recommend this artist. He's making new music still now, right now. Like he's reaching his artistic peak right now. You know, so
Ok,
everybody should listen to it. It's fantastic.
ok, ok. Dice que lo recomienda, que es alguien que está haciendo música todavía y que está en su peak, que está en su mejor punto ahora mismo. What's his name?
Johnny, Jawny.
Johnny. County.
Jawny.
Ok. Hoy quiero preguntar de nuevo el cómo se diferencia el dominante auxiliar, porque cuando pienso que lo sé, entiendo más. Sí. So someone asks how to differentiate any dominant versus auxiliary or tool, how you call it.
Um, well, dominant is an absolute value. Tool function is an instrumental value. And the way that plays out is any tool they want to continue to talk about and ideate about something forever without it because they countervalue NI, right? They countervalue a single answer. Whereas NE-DOMs, I don't want to keep talking about something forever. I want to have the single right answer to things.
Ok. Ok, dice que la diferencia es que NE, auxiliar o tool, él le llama tool o herramienta, los que lo tienen como valor, o sea, la diferencia es valor absoluto versus valor instrumental. Entonces, los que lo tienen como valor instrumental quieren seguir hablando y hablando y dando ideas y nuevas ideas y nuevas ideas porque tienen contravalorada ante NI, que NI es como que ya, ¿cuál va a ser el camino para tomar? Y N es como de, no, 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 sacamos nuevos y nuevos y nuevos y nuevos. Entonces dice que, en cambio, los que tienen NE como valor absoluto no quieren quedarse en las ideas por siempre porque quieren, o sea, me imagino que él lo dice o sea, tomándose el mismo de ejemplo, que él es NTP, o sea, TI tool, TI herramienta. O sea, que quiere dentro de esas ideas sí elegir, o sea, sí enfocarse más en algo. Which almost sounds like it could be the opposite. Like absolute value is just a flood of ideas.
No, I mean, absolute value means that it's the end rather than the means. So for an INTP, they come up with ideas in order to fully understand all possibilities, not in order to decide on a possibility to do, right?
Okay, can you repeat that again?
Yeah. So INTPs, they come up with all the possible ideas in order to fully understand all the possibilities, not in order to resolve them into a single course of action that they then do. That's why they're SE polar.
So in contrast, how does the ENTP look in contrast?
So instead of using ideation as a tool to get somewhere, it's an end in itself to come up with good ideas. But because of the way the structure goes, it has to be a good idea for it to be valued in and of itself. So it has to validate on both NE and NI.
Okay, okay. Dice que, por poner de ejemplo, INTP o sea, va a explorar ideas solo por entender todas esas ideas que pueda haber, simplemente entendiéndolas. En cambio, ENTP NE es el valor absoluto, es el valor por sí solo, pero tienen que ser um, ideas significativas, o sea, ideas relevantes, ideas buenas, eh, porque INTP tiene contravalorada NI, o sea, eh, ajá, en contraste. Okay, so I would ask you how how is it different? How is different the ignoring from the counter value?
So um the the main difference is ignoring is an absolute value, but as it says in Socionics, it's something people tend to ignore. Like I'm less so this way now, but I remember as a kid, I used to think things like, well, that seems like the obvious answer, but I can't use that because it seems like the obvious answer, you know. But the point is that the key thing to note is how the second slot function is instrumental, and then that helps explain the sixth a bit. But it's like so I'm TI tool, right? But being correct isn't an end in itself for me, although it might sound like it. The end in itself is getting my ideas extroverted, like so extroverting my intuition and getting other people to think, wow, Eric's correct and smart. In other words, to have good perceptions of me, FE third. Those are the absolute values. The being correct thing is not actually an absolute value for me. So if something's unfair in favor of Rachel, I don't have any problem with that because fairness is not an absolute value for me anyway.
Fairness?
Fairness is not an absolute value for me. It's an instrumental value.
By fairness, you mean TI?
Well, fairness is one expression of TI.
Okay.
Correctness and fairness are both expressions of TI. In other words, it's a disinterested calculus. You use the same analysis for situation A, which you want to be one way or the other, as for situation B, which you are indifferent about. You use the same kind of analysis in either case. That's what makes it fair, right? But the thing is, I'm fine with things being unfair in other people's favor because I have FE as an absolute value. It makes me look generous and good and likable.
Oh, okay, let me try to synthesize all of that. Ok, yo también entonces le pregunté que cómo era diferente. O sea, claro, Eric enumera las funciones como si fuera el modelo de John Vivi, o como si fuera MBTI, o sea, 4 y luego las 8. O sea, así 4 y las 5, 6, 7 y 8. Él las enumera así, para estar claros. Entonces yo le pregunté que cuál es la diferencia entre la quinta y la sexta, que sería en Socionics la la ignorada y la demostrativa. Entonces, ya, de nuevo, Eric dice que las funciones, la uno, o sea, iba así, la uno y la quinta son valores absolutos y las siguientes son valores instrumentales, y luego valores absolutos y valores instrumentales. Entonces dice, por ejemplo, que de niño le pasaba, sí, o sea, sobre cómo se ve la ignorada, decía que de niño le pasaba que tal vez pensaba algo y decía, ok, o sea, la respuesta obvia es esta, pero es la respuesta obvia, no me quiero ir por eso. Entonces también dijo que TI, o sea, la consistencia lógica, no es el objetivo, sino lo usado para lograr, o sea, las de valor instrumental son las que se usan para lograr los valores absolutos. Entonces, su valor absoluto son más bien NE y FE. Entonces dice que no tiene problema con que algo en cuanto a TI, o sea incorrecto, si, si es por alguien más. Dice, si eso me hace ver como alguien amable, agradable, buena persona, etcétera.
Let me give an example that I think will help explain too. If you have FE absolute value, you're going to want to pay for the meal all the time and let the other person get a free meal because you're paying for it. If you're a TI absolute value, you're going to insist that you take turns paying for it so that it's fair.
Ok, y dice que un ejemplo para explicar también esto de manera más clara es que si tienes FE como valor absoluto, quieres pagar por la comida de la otra persona. Simplemente porque quieres o porque, ajá, porque eso es lo que te hace ver bien o va a hacer quedar bien con otra persona o quieres quedar bien con otra persona, algo así. Mientras que si eres TI, valor absoluto, vas a decir, no, que sea uno y uno para que sea justo. O sea, porque se está valorando la justicia por encima pues, por encima de lo demás. Okay, so someone says, I suspect my dad is an ENTP. Which tips could you give me to confirm it?
Well, I mean, to check to see if he's an NTP of some sort, you just need to confirm kind of an endless pool of ability of extroverted intuition to come up with more possibilities. And then you need to just check the TI with like conditional logic kind of questions. If they're both very strong, then there's some kind of NTP, either I or E.
Ok. Dijo que para cualquier tipo NTP, pues tienes que ver sobre, entendí creo que la abundancia de ideas, sí, y luego pues también pruebas el TI sobre la consistencia lógica, creo que dijo. Ya se me olvidó.
So, like if NE is 1 or 2 and you say, how many possible ways can you think of to use a loaf of bread? then any person will probably say, well, infinite in theory. And then if you press them, they'll be able to just continue to come up with them. You could use it as a doorstop. You could use it as a paperweight. You could use it as a soft kind of thing to hit someone over the head with. You could put two pieces of bread around your face and call them cheek warmers. You could come up with infinite of those.
Right. Pues decía que para probar NE, pues le puedes decir a alguien sobre cuántas, cuántos usos, o sí, cuántos usos te ocurren que le puedes dar a un pedazo de pan. Y que te dirá, pues no sé, pues muchos, infinitos tal vez. Y que si le preguntas a ver como cuál, que pues va a dar uno tras otro. Va a decir, no, pues se puede poner como para sostener la puerta, se puede usar para calentarte la cara, se puede usar para aventárselo a alguien en la cabeza y así.
Another good NE test is name this invention. How many different snappy names can you come up with for it? Like, so let's say the invention is a cup of coffee that had a cigarette holder attached right here. What are some names? Well, you could be like the smoking drink or the coffee echo or whatever, right? So any people will be able to keep coming up with names because they're fixated on it being a great name. They just come up with more names. Whereas NI people or weaker NE people won't be able to come up with a great deal of names.
Yeah, that's sort more or less a question I make in my typing session. So yeah, they might be somewhat familiar with it, but um, dijo también que sí, que otra buena forma de probar NE es sobre decirles que le pongan nombre a algún invento. O sea, y puso la taza y dijo cómo le pondrían a una taza que también pueda sostener cigarros y que cuántos nombres así como ingeniosos se te pueden ocurrir y que como no valoran que tenga que ser absolutamente uno y ya, pues se les ocurrirá uno y otro. Right, so I just remember in a typing session, I had a girl that I asked her. So I always come up with a weird, at times even incompatible invention, just so I can see how much, yeah, they're, yeah, how much they're willing to just invent new words or whatever. So I said, I don't know, something weird, like maybe a stapler with a whatever, and she maybe a pen, and I don't remember what it was, but she just said, "Oh, so multi-kit." That's kind of an NE polar, right?
Multi-kit?
Yeah,
I mean, the thing is, it really depends not just on what one answer is, but how many different answers and how different they are from each other. So, like any polar might be able to come up with two answers. One might be like multi-kit, and the other one might be MK. Those are they're really the same idea. It's just one's an abbreviation of the other.
right.
Whereas somebody who's more conscious NE will come up with things that are actually very different from each other.
Okay. One example of what I believe to be NE polar is, did you watch the movie Zoolander?
What's it called?
Zoolander.
Oh yeah, I watched it.
So there's a moment when he's just when he's still rival with the other model, and he says, "Hey, Hansel, you think you're too cool for school, but guess what? You're not." That's any color, right?
Well, I mean,
Somewhat of an example, right?
yeah, it's it kind of seems SI-ish in the sense that it's quoting like a it's not original at all, right? Like you're too cool for school is a saying that already existed.
Right. But
So
then when he has to come up with something else,
right, yeah. Right. He also only has one look, and then he comes up with a second look, but it's the same as the first look.
so Zoolander ISFP.
Yeah, maybe, but I think it's unfair to any type to type like humorous characters like that as a given type. For example, Homer Simpson. Who wants to be Homer Simpson's type? You know?
Sure, of course. Yeah, there's. I always try to put emphasis in fictional characters are on really are on a whole nother level. Like they're not real people. I always try to make that distinction, but I
Yeah.
always find it very amusing or entertaining to see to try to catch little examples.
Well, I think NI people especially like typing fictional characters.
Sorry, what?
I think NI people are more likely to want to type fictional characters.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, because they are more likely to think the 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 unique particulars of SI aren't important to something's identity.
Yeah, I can see that. I do have somewhat that of that approach when typing characters. I will do it. I mean, sometimes a single instance can be very relevant, but I do try to type it as a whole. Like, what does this character represent in the story and whatever.
The show that I think has the best written to type characters is Bob's Burgers. I don't think it intentionally did it, but those characters are all very distinctly a specific type.
Ok, dice que hay una serie que se llama Bob's Burgers y que dice que tiene o sea, que probablemente no fue intencional, pero que tiene personajes muy representativos de ciertos tipos.
The
El
mom's
otro día me pregunté,
ESFJ, the mom's
what?
ESFJ, the dad's ISTJ, the oldest girl is INFP, Tina. The boy is ESFP, and the youngest girl is ENTP.
Okay, well, I didn't know them, but there you have it. Mm, okay, so someone asked, actually, I just asked you this the last time, but if you believe the type is inborn or acquired.
I think you're born your type, but I can't substantiate that claim.
Mm. Ok, dice que él cree que se nace con el tipo, pero que no puede fundamentar, o sea, realmente, sustancialmente fundamentar eso. O sea, es algo que pareciera ser así, pero hasta ahí.
Fundamentar? What does fundamentar mean?
Fundamentar is,
Oh,
uh,
fundamentar, fundamental?
yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
No, but wait, no, actually, no. No, 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 actually not. Because fundamental means like very important, like key. Fundamental is more of I just my mind just went blank.
Or does it mean like proved or something? What I was wondering is if
Yeah,
that was the thing you were used to mean substantiate.
yeah. Basically, substantiate is more the synonym.
All right, cool.
Yeah, I was thinking of what do you call the structure of a building?
Oh,
Foundation.
well, yeah, there's the foundation of the building, but that's not. It's like the structure of the building is kind of like its skeleton, I guess. You know, like when they put up a building, first they put the cross beams and stuff, and then they fill in the walls and stuff like that. So yeah, it's like when they're building a building that's very tall, they'll put scaffolding on the outside of it too. But that's obviously not the structure of the building, but it
Right.
shows how they build the structure first and then they fill in the other parts.
Porque si me hacen unas cosas es complejo y que no sé. Yeah, someone says that questioning the why animals do things is very complex because animals have very distinct levels of intelligence, and some even who are not so intelligent do very complex things, like some insects, insects in their colonies.
All right, well, that person is right that probably shouldn't try to do too much with animals and cognitive functions because it's the sort of thing you can't really validate because because as we understand cognitive functions, half of them are communicative, but we can't really apply that to animal communication. So that person's right. I sh- I suspect that cognitive functions apply to various life forms, but I shouldn't be making those arguments.
Ok, dice que sí, que Totolote, estás en lo correcto, que no sería como tan prudente atribuir eso porque pues no sabemos, o sea, las funciones son en parte comunicativas, entonces, y dice que cree que se pueden aplicar a varias formas de vida, pero que no se podría hacer esas, no se podría asegurar. Ok. Mm,
Like, I type my cats. So
really?
yeah. I've got one ENFJ cat and an ISTJ cat.
Dice
But
que
I
habiendo
can't
dicho
prove
eso,
that. I can't prove it. That's what I believe them to be.
I believe one of my cats is maybe INFJ.
Maybe.
Dice que habiendo dicho eso, tipeó a dos de sus gatos, uno es NFJ y uno es ISTJ. Yo dije que yo creo que uno de los que yo tengo es INFJ. So
This is the
also,
ISTJ cat. I'm going to show you the ISTJ cat. She's right out here.
let me see the ISTJ. Look at him doing ISTJ things.
Yeah, she likes to lick water off of her paw for some reason.
Dice que está mostrando su gato ISTJ. So I saw in a document of yours that in a list of examples, that you had Thanos as what, ENTJ, I believe.
I'm sorry. Say again. I uh, I missed that.
So in a document you have a list of characters, and you have Thanos as ENTJ, I believe.
Oh, Thanos is the ENTJ. I mean, that makes sense.
I I also thought that, but it's actually the next video I'm going to publish. It's practically finished. I just have to do the thumbnail and stuff. But I believe ENFJ is also quite fitting.
Yeah, that's possible. But I'm just wondering about the callous disregard of the experience of individuals that he's killing. Seems like that's the sort of thing that's justified by utilitarianism, which is implicit as an absolute value to ENTJ, whereas it's an instrumental value in ENFJs.
Hmm, interesting.
But
So
people say Hitler was an INFJ, so who knows?
who? Sorry.
People say Hitler was an INFJ, so who knows?
All right. I think it's something like what you described with Jordan Peterson. I don't remember exactly what was it, but something about using metaphors in their speech. It's a similar case, right?
Yeah, it's a bunch of holistic meanings. Like, what can we actually conclude at all about humans based on lobsters? Nothing, nothing. But he's just using analogy, kind of metaphorical analogy to explain to justify his kind of agenda-driven claims about human interactions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not an NI valuing type, and I find kind of annoying how because you managed to say something in an indirect way, somehow people are mesmerized by that.
Well, you call it saying something in an indirect way. I call it not really saying anything at all.
Sure. Like in saying it in an indirect way at best and not saying anything at all at worst. Yeah, I mean, you can. There's really moments where you're saying nothing, but it sounds mystical or rhetorical or whatever, and people are like amazed by that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a big believer in operationalized definitions. You should have things defined so that you can use what you're saying to make distinctions, and anybody can use it equivalently. Like, is it legal for you to drive? We'll define that at age 16, okay? If you're 15, it's not. If you're 16, it is. Okay, so that's a way that we can use words to make a distinction and test the case out. Like, well, what about Bob? Well, how old are they? They're 17. Okay, well, then they're okay. You know, we use
Imagine,
our words about philosophy to do the same kind of stuff.
imagine an ENFJ doing that, as in, okay, so go to page 16, and then it just gives a story on and
Right.
on why it should be legal or not.
Or it says things like introverted intuition is the cognitive function of seeing the future. No, it's not. Okay, yes, SI links strongly to the past, it's experiential, but NI is knowing about things of themselves outside of you. And so accordingly, it's not about the future. It sure, a person can introvertedly intuit before something happens that something's going to happen. Okay. But they can also anticipate something's going to happen because they've experienced it happening many times before.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, and well, the way I understand it is about just seeing um the series of cause and effect. I mean, seeing the future. Well, if you know enough information, you will know the future. If you know the enough information, you know what's going to happen to an extent.
But almost always, introverted intuition is about knowing the present. So, for example, an example of introverted intuition going wrong is I used to, when I used to stay up a lot, I'd start to kind of hallucinate after you don't get enough sleep for a while. And I remember I'd be driving home from my friend's house like at 4 in the morning or something, and I'd see some trash cans up in the distance. But what I saw was what looked like a group of people huddling over there. I was like, "What's that group of people doing over there?" And then I got closer, I'd be like, "Oh, they're trash cans." That's an example of I introvertedly intuited the wrong thing.
Sure.
So knowing by intuition doesn't mean you're right. It doesn't necessarily have to do with the past or the future, right? It usually occurs in the present because it's from shape constancy. If we think about the proto skill of shape constancy, the first thing that babies have to learn are object permanence and shape constancy. That means that when you close your eyes, the thing that was in front of you doesn't disappear. That's object permanence. Shape constancy is that this is the same as this, even though it looks different.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
in
Even someone who gains sight has to uh, just know the information that someone just got bigger, but actually what that means is it's walking towards them.
right. Okay, so yeah, that's also shape constancy and identity constancy, right? So it's like um, SI in the object permanence sense is about objects outside of you uh, that link to your experience. In other words, that you assume nothing changes when you aren't looking.
Right.
And NI says you assume other things don't change even though you are looking. Even though you're looking at it from different angles and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So what else?
You should translate that last sentence that SI says things don't change when I'm not looking. And NI says things uh, don't change even though I'm looking. Or, something like that.
Dice que también otra forma de distinguir NI y SI es que, o sea, o sea, los humanos de bebés tienen que aprender que aunque cierres los ojos y no veas algo, esa cosa sigue ahí. O sea, no porque no la ves, desaparece. Y también que las cosas, y por eso puso algo,
It's
se
very
supone que,
unfortunate that I in Spanish is E.
ya, ya,
It's very unfortunate.
it does create confusion. When I remember I had that issue that I was like, ENFP, no, E.
And then
Uh,
E is A, right? So when you say like you say in E, you say in A, right?
Again?
Okay, so when you say NI, you say NE. But when you
NE,
say so if you're talking about extroverted intuition, how do you say the two letters?
NE,
NA, right? And if you're talking about introverted intuition, you say NE, right?
E.
Yeah, that's confusing.
I can imagine, I can imagine. Entonces dice que si también tienen lo otro que tienes que aprender es que si algo lo ves, se ve así. Pero de pronto se ve así, es lo mismo. O sea, no cambió nada nomás porque ahora se ve diferente. O sea, sobre aprender esto de no, o sea, sobre cómo son las cosas, básicamente. So what else? I was thinking about something, but I forgot.
Well, one thing I've been thinking about regarding cognitive functions is the way that everybody's insecurities are in their fourth and eighth slot function primarily.
Fourth and eighth?
Yeah. So if you
Okay,
have
pues.
S in your 4 and 8, then you're going to be insecure about, experiential knowing and experiential doing. So you'll be insecure about remembering things and taking care of yourself. You'll be insecure about having sex and following through on actions and stuff like that. All of that stuff in the sensing area, that's where you're going to be insecure if you're in the fourth slot. If you got like say F's in the fourth slot, you're going to be insecure about other people's opinion about you and about whether or not you're putting yourself in other people's shoes enough.
Right, and I think that's a big misconception because I think people get it somewhat of the other way around. They think that because someone prioritizes logic is going to be almost, I mean, not everybody, but inherently somewhat evil because they just don't care.
Right. Actually, they're going to be insecure about that because they're going to feel their own shortcomings and be subject to critique in those areas. Whereas they're not going to be subject to critique in like their dominant or second function, really.
Ok, entonces lo que dijo es que otro punto relevante es que la inseguridad viene de las funciones 4 y 8. De nuevo, recordemos 4 y 8 según esta numeración, que no es la de Socionics. Entonces, claro, dice que si la debilidad está en cuanto a las funciones sensoriales, pues te va a costar hacer las cosas, o sea, hacer cosas, mantener las acciones que debes hacer para lograr algo, que si en cambio son las de sentimiento, las de emociones, tu inseguridad va a estar ahí. Entonces yo le dije como se suele pensar al revés, como que los tipos lógicos se suelen tener como villanos porque, no les importan las emociones o los sentimientos o todo eso, cuando en realidad es el área donde están inseguros. O sea, es donde si alguien les critica eso, probablemente les llegue más. O sea, si alguien les está diciendo, hey, ¿qué te pasa? ¿Eres mala persona por esto? Primero les va a impactar y luego van a intentar cuestionárselo y luego no van a saber bien qué hacer con eso. Do you play games at all?
Me? Um, Occasionally, not very often, but occasionally I'll play like one of those old games on the emulator, like Road Rash or Oregon Trail or something. And occasionally I'll play Simulator. And then if I can find somebody to play against me, I'll play chess sometimes.
Okay. There's a game that I think is very TI oriented. I mean, if you take it seriously, because you can just play it casually and it looks pretty, but if you go deep into it, it's called Bloons Tower Defense.
It's called what?
Bloons Tower Defense.
Balloon, Balloons Stellar Defense?
Tower. Tower
Oh,
Defense.
Balloons Tower Defense?
The thing is, it's not balloons. It's balloons. It's literally called that. Bloons.
Oh, I see. Balloons Tower Defense.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And is it like a war strategy game?
Well, it's a defense game, as in enemy appears here, goes through this path, and exits here. You have to stop it from exiting. And I mean, I found it to be very TI because it's about so when you pop the balloons, you get money, and you have to manage that money to get certain towers to pop more balloons, and they get stronger because they get more layers, and then layers get properties. Like there's a metal layer that it's immune to sharp objects. There's a one that's immune to magic, whatever. So you have to, yeah, just know, yeah, strategy, I suppose.
I mean, it sounds a little more TE than TI to me, but like Minecraft, for example, is the ultimate TE game.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The really the point of Minecraft is just capitalism, just getting more resources to make more resources.
Yeah. I played a little bit of Minecraft. It's pretty fun, but I don't know. I don't. If I were gonna get a game that I wanted to play a lot, I would have to get a PlayStation and get the NCAA football game.
A football.
Yeah.
So just that maybe made me remember that uh, the one solar from the Lorax, I believe to be an ENTJ.
I'm not sure who you're talking about. Someone from the Lorax, the counselor, you said?
The one solar.
The one solar. I'm not familiar enough with the story, I guess. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, I see. Yeah, so basically the guy that makes the whole corporate thing.
Oh, right. Okay. I remember the basics gist of the story, I guess. Yeah, well, I mean, it, that's not a terrible typing, but it almost seems more like an ESTJ move because it's a lack of intuition about the whole, you know?
Sure, yeah, it's and it's also hard because like we're talking about philosophy but then also a character, and then which version of the character, stuff like that. For example,
Right.
in the movie, I do believe you see good intuition with him, maybe from what I remember.
It seems like he has good solvency. Like he's able to figure out workarounds to a succession of problems. But what I would say is that an ENTJ would keep a bigger purpose in mind, whereas an ESTJ is more likely to just keep doing what's, keep keep on taking problems as they arrive one at a time.
Right. Sure, I think the story tries to portray more of he was so blinded by just a vision of just getting more and more. So actually ignoring or not paying attention so much to the concrete or the something like that.
Maybe. I guess we don't know enough about the character. Like, how good a job did they do of getting a full night's sleep would be helpful in typing them.
Right. Hmm. Well, the thing is, just the actual invention, that need, it's supposed to be a piece of fabric that can do anything. He says, like, think about possibilities. You can do this, and can also be that. And can, so that's relatively good in intuition, maybe.
I mean, ESTJs have a third slot. Coming up with more possibilities of ways to sell something or solve a problem or whatever is not going to be difficult for them. What's going to be difficult for them is having a singular vision.
Mm. Yeah, well, will we get to inconsistency between the characters and the fact that a character doesn't necessarily have a congruent type
Yeah.
necessarily.
So, some characters are written just more in keeping with actual type, and some are more of a mishmash of different types.
Yeah, and that doesn't necessarily mean one is better than the other.
No, it doesn't. But I suspect that characters that are written more faithfully to how people actually are going to be written more faithfully to type, and that's going to resonate with audiences more.
Yeah, I have a right to the same conclusion that when people just praise a character for, oh, how great of a character creation process, yeah, it's because it sticks to a type and to the complexities of that singular type.
Most of all, it doesn't give like superpowers to a character so they can be both, you know, FI Dom and TI Dom in their skills or something. It allows characters to have their deficit areas that are implied by their strengths.
Yeah, because we inherently value consistency because it's what we see around us.
Because it's what it means to have a cognitive function configuration is that you are a dominant and a tool function, and that implies the relationship with each of the other possible ways of paying attention.
Yeah, I do hope in a future help me. I think I mentioned this in in our typing session. In the future, it will help me to create fiction, just stories, and also with the intertype relations and stuff.
Yeah, that's true. It also sounds like a fun thing to do. I haven't considered writing fiction myself since learning about cognitive functions. It sounds like a good idea. There's a couple different places to start with working on fiction. You could start with a plot concept, a world concept, but you could also start with characters,
Yeah. Yeah, there's no one way for making fiction.
If you were going to write fiction, what kind of fiction would you write?
I don't know. I don't know. That's problem for future me. I mean, I like series because you can see the development of a character and you can work extensively. Well, extensively more than in a movie.
What about this? A romantic story about the forbidden love between a pirate and a ninja.
But since I'm an Innate type 4, I want I don't I want to be unique. I
I
can
see.
deal with cliches.
Okay. That I mean, then write a story about an avocado farmer who juggles goats on the side.
Who juggles what?
Juggles goats.
Goats. Sure, I'll make a story about it. A farmer who juggles goats.
Yeah. It'd be a wonderful story. I'd make it into a feature film in Spanish.
Sí, en español.
Yeah.
Right, so what else? I mean, I've deliberately tried not to go into this topic, but maybe we could. I mean, there's no really new comments.
Go ahead and broach whatever topic you want.
What?
Go ahead and raise whatever topic you want.
Right, so you typing me ISFJ.
Mm-hmm.
um, can you hear that? That's my cat.
Oh, that's your cat.
Yeah, it's asking. Let me. She wants to come out.
Well, I don't remember exactly why I typed GISFJ. Like I don't remember this. I don't remember the specifics of the session. Presumably, I tested your extroverted intuition a fair amount and concluded it wasn't Tool.
Yeah,
Um,
I believe that's what you said. So I really questioned that, but I did, and also a friend watched it, and he's so he's an ENTP, and he said that the the Inky Pinky was too hard, and also the language difference.
okay, well, it's possible. It wouldn't be the first time that I was wrong if I am wrong, but I mean the thing is, both ISFJ and INFP have SI as an absolute value, but the difference is that ISFJ has the T's as absolute values, and INFP has the F's as absolute values. So you seem pretty T valuing to me. Otherwise, like INFPs do sometimes get into typology, but when they talk about it, they sound more like Dulles, I think, than you.
Like what?
Dulles. Have you ever watched his videos? Dulles is an INFP who makes some occasional videos about cognitive functions. He comes around the
Dollars.
channel. Yeah.
I'm not
D
sure.
U Dulles.
No, no, doesn't. No, I
Well,
don't think.
maybe check out one of his videos sometime. And like, to me, that's classic INFP, the way he is. If you feel like you're like him, and then I'd say, okay, well, maybe I'm not seeing something here. But if you're like, no, I'm definitely not like him, then I'd say you're probably not an INFP.
Okay.
Like, what makes you convinced you are an INFP?
Well, I'm very bad at SE. Mm,
Okay,
and
well,
yeah,
what does that look like? What does that look like being bad at SC?
able to give an adequate response in real time, just being able to react appropriately. Like there have been so many instances when I just think of the perfect response months later.
Okay, well, thinking of the perfect response is different than an SE problem. That's more of an NE problem. The SE problem would be like, um, well, for example, like Acacia. Uh, hey, do you want to go to get some food? And she'll be like, well, yes, but I need many hours to mentally prepare myself to leave the house.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. Well,
I postpone maybe homework just because I don't feel like it, like doing it. It's more like I don't feel I can do it right now, so I don't want to do it, and I'll just postpone indefinitely. And then when I have to, I force myself to do it, and it's always like that.
well, I mean, that does sound somewhat more like an INFP than an ISFJ, but you know, in either cases, in either case, you're going to end up with a very iffy relationship with self-reporting because you got either um, dominant
Yeah,
function dominant function of subjective knowing or dominant function of subjective deciding. So,
sure.
it makes it hard to accurately self-report about certain kinds of things. But it's also the case that like INFJs have maybe the most difficult time accurately self-reporting of all in some ways because they they keep trying to know who they are from some external angle without referencing their own experience.
Right. I mean, from what I've heard, another clear indicator is that I do struggle with keeping a consistent sleep schedule. Somehow I always find something interesting to do when the day is about to end, and I'm like, oh, just a little more sleep, and I end up regretting it then the day after.
Well, I mean, I think the question is like you might feel like you might self-report that you have difficulty finding a consistent sleep schedule because you're very well aware of how much sleep you need and you're getting a little bit too little sleep, or you might self-report that because you you have an actual like actual problem sleeping like me or Rachel, right? So it's hard for me to know. Like, me and Rachel, we really have a lot of trouble getting any kind of regularity in our sleep schedules, and we have trouble getting enough sleep in general, even though we've got no responsibilities or anything.
Yeah. mm, I mean, I know I'm SI valuing. Mm, it's just I don't think I'm good at it. I wish I were better.
It's possible, but the thing is, it's hard to say whether you're comparing against an ideal that you understand very well or comparing against other people's norms.
Yeah. Mm, sure. I mean, like I said, maybe with time you can decide.
Okay, yeah, I've got an open mind regarding the matter.
You what?
I said I have an open mind regarding the matter.
Sure. Also, the thing is, I really don't like when I'm forced to FE. Even when I was a kid, when maybe I was just posing for the camera, and they would say like "smile, smile," and I would be motivated to even less. Don't ask me to. I really don't like when people are like, "Oh, come on, cheer up."
Okay. Well, how do you feel about it when other people aren't trying to control your displays or whatever? Do
When
you
people,
feel do you feel that you're, in other words, do you not like that because it's interfering with your managing the FE yourself, or do you not like it because it's it's forcing you to FE whereas otherwise you wouldn't?
what did what was the first one?
The first one is they're they're being proactive about FE stuff is interfering with your more elegant way of
No,
FEing.
the second definitely is because I would. Yeah, yeah, no.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, we'll just, I don't know. I'll have to interact with you some more and see, but I don't normally spend a lot of time paying attention to what someone's type is, unless there are things that they reach out and grab me and say, this person is this type. Like you could, if you were an ESTJ, for example, and you were saying, you know, it really bugs me when people try to make something be just one thing, and we should always add a corkscrew to it. Then I would be like, oh, this person's probably an ESTJ because they're saying such ESTJ thing. But in general, if that doesn't happen, if nothing jumps out at me, I don't really think about their type.
Yeah, okay. Do you believe maybe INFJs have an intrinsic desire to just help others?
INFJs? No,
Not necessarily.
I don't think they want to help others.
Hmm.
To the extent that someone's helpful or not, I think that probably links more to Enneagram than functions, actually. Like if your approach to, you know, maintaining status with the group is being helpful, that's consistent with Enneagram too. If your approach to maintaining status with the group is being high achieving, that's consistent with Enneagram 3. And if your approach to maintaining status with the group is, I don't care about status with the group, fuck you and your rules, then that's the Enneagram 4.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, maybe we can go get back a little bit to correlations because yeah, I do believe even from more of an empirical view, I really haven't seen the unusual or impossible combinations. Like always when I have the opportunity to know more about the person, it really always ends up being the most likely combinations.
So you mean you're not going to see any ENTPs, Enneagram
Eight.
2?
Yeah, no.
Okay, so what Enneagrams do you think ENTPs are going to be?
Seven.
Just always 7?
Let me think. I don't remember if maybe six, but yeah, most likely only seven. And sounds kind of limiting. And at first, I was like, how is that going to be? But really, yeah, all ENTPs I've known are seven. And I'm not saying just because of my experience that's going to be the universal, but I also don't believe it's a thing of luck. Of maybe there's someone around in the world that's an ENTP eight.
No, well, but what I'm saying thinking is there are only 9 Enneagram numbers and there's 16 types. So you're going to have at least more than one type per number for some of the numbers.
Yeah.
So like, what else is a 7 besides ENTPs?
So seven is the any any DOMs.
Okay.
So
And what about 8?
just ENFP. But you can even take into account instinctual variance. Sexual seven is going to be ENFP. Also ENTP. I believe that one can also be. Social
I think
seven,
I'm a sexual 7.
sexual seven.
Yeah, I am.
I thought you could be a self-preservation, but yeah, maybe not. So what was I saying? Sexual seven, ENFP, ENTP, social seven. Oh wait, no. Yeah, let me correct. Seven, I believe, can also be ENFJ and ENTJ. So social seven is ENTJ, and
I mean, 7 and TE don't seem to go very well together. I think
right.
I've known an 8 who's an ESTJ and I've known an 8 who's an ESTP.
I thought I actually thought very similar, but then I have a friend who I actually interviewed in my channel, who you can see is an ENTJ seven. Like seven makes sense and ENTJ makes sense. Yeah, it
Okay.
sounds weird, but
Okay,
but
but see, look, I know an ESTP who's a 1 probably first, and an ESTJ who's an 8. So
okay,
they're not always the same type.
maybe they're the other way around. I mean, sexual one can be very aggressive, seeming like an eight.
Okay, well, I feel pretty confident that in my typing in both of these ESTPs because I spend a lot of time around both of them.
ESTP is most likely only eight.
I mean, my daughter is definitely an ESTP and she's definitely not an 8
Yeah, why?
because I I know what an 8 is like, right? I've interacted with plenty of 8s in my day. My dad was an 8, and the key thing about 8s is when you come at them with anger, they respond with anger, and when they encounter a barrier that they don't like, they're likely to gradually at least get angry. My daughter instead disengages from anger. But if you're going to be mad, I don't even want to talk to you until you calm down. She's a 1. She's clearly in the 1 category, but she's also definitely an ESTP.
I mean, self-preservation eight could be not as maybe not as reactive.
I mean, I don't buy it. At that point, you're trying to modify the meaning of 8 into something that it's not by applying a kind of special pleading approach towards sexual variant, instinctual variant. So
I mean,
I don't think that all instances of a given type are the same enneagram. I just think that's a fundamentally wrong idea. The fact that you found an ENTJ who's a 7 is not indicative that all ENTJs are 7,
no,
right?
they can.
They can be.
Yeah, that combination is possible.
Okay, but you don't think it's possible for ENTJs to be something other than 7?
No, ENTJs can be 3, maybe 6, not sure, uh, and 7.
But you don't think that ESTPs can be 1?
I mean, it's not likely. I do have an open mind about it. If I see an example that really verifies it, I'll accept it.
Okay. That's very SI of
But
you.
but what?
That's very SI of you. I see that until I see an ENTJ who's a Mya and an ENTJ and an ENTJ who's a Mya, then all ENTJs are Mya.
But not all. And even it's more. I don't know if to say probable or common, but ENTJ is more of a 3 archetype. But then again, I encountered this friend of mine who's an ENTJ and he's a 7. So
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay, so I think I'm gonna split and make some dinner.
sure,
It was nice chatting with you.
yeah. Uh, same goes. So thank you for
Adios,
joining. It
and I'll
was
talk to
really
you soon.
fun.
All right, later.
We'll talk later.